We have a guest joining us in the studio. His name is Irungu Nyakera. He is the party leader of the Farmers Party. He's here because we want to talk about farmers and farmers growing food so that food becomes cheap and the cost of production becomes affordable, and also farmers make money. Irungu, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Asante sana. Happy to be here this morning.
Very good. Is it as cold out there as it is in here?
Actually, it isn't. And also, it's not rainy. I think the rains keep coming and going.
Okay.
They need to tell us what is the plan.
So it's a better morning today than it was yesterday.
Not bad.
So the other day we saw, first, cost of living, unga and other commodity prices very high. The government has been saying it's deploying interventions, and those interventions include what they're saying is we want to import grain into the country so that then we can, duty-free grain. When we import duty-free grain, then we're able to supply to our millers, add into the market, and that should stabilize the prices. Okay? And already some grain has started arriving in the country. But then the government has also said, we have also realized that actually the global market for maize specifically is quite tight, because many of the countries that are producing maize are saying they did not get a good harvest in the last harvest, so they are not really they're not keen on exporting. There was a story yesterday, Zambia saying, the agriculture minister for Zambia saying, we are not going to export our grain because we don't have sufficient. We have seen others, it's the same. So maize has been an issue. Our agriculture CS goes to Zambia and strikes a deal with the government of Zambia. And the government of Zambia allocates Kenya some 49,000 prime land, touching tarmac, with a river in between, and all those things. And says, lakini hizo msiuze plot, msikatakate 50 by 100. Hii, musilete mambo ati touching tarmac, mwanze kulete ati. No. This one, you grow maize. And the maize that you harvest from here, you can then export it. It'll be considered as Kenyan maize. Okay? You can export it, take it to your country. The agriculture minister has said he's then now looking to contract farmers, big farmers in Zambia, who will get into that 49,000 acres, grow maize. In 3 months' time, maize is harvested. Maize gets onto the Tazara Railway, gets to Tanzania, trucks, gets to border. Ikifika tu Namanga hivi, unga 60 bob. These farmers are not happy with that, CT.
You know, this story of maize, more maize, no maize, if you just go 2 years into history, we were talking about a glut country that produced maize. This same Zambia did not know what to do with their maize. Now, the question I ask is, okay, so when you have an overproduction, what do? You don't have the capacity to store it. Now, a country like China does precisely that.
They store.
Oh, yes. And if you're talking about stocks, they probably have the largest stock of maize on the planet. So, when one talks about even Kenya, when we have a situation where we have more maize than we know what to do with, we have National Cereals and Produce Board. You keep asking the question, there are these things we refer to as best practices. Why is it that we are not doing this? Why is it that we move from one season of abundance to abject poverty, the next one, to the point where we don't even know what to do with ourselves? Surely. And then you have ministries that deal with agriculture. Then you have a whole ministry that deals with planning. You have another ministry that deals with God knows what is supposed to relate to all these things. So you have to ask the question, so should we collapse these ministries and send everybody home?
This man was once the PS for planning.
Why do you think I've taken that discussion why do you think I've taken that discussion in that direction? Because
he was once PS for planning. Let's start with Sasa tuko hapa. Had you planned for this?
The beauty is actually most of those things that we are talking about are planned because we are a country that plans. The problem is we do not implement the plans. Yeah. When we talk about the imports, we don't. The issue of importing maize in the current season, duty-free, nobody has an issue with that. Yeah, because we find ourselves in the situation and the circumstances we are in where there's a maize shortage. And the only solution for that shortage, at least in the short term, is the importation. The problem we have is the long term, because the long term plan cannot be going to Zambia to lease land. Zambia has 3.8 million arable hectares of arable land. Kenya has 5.8 million hectares of arable land, meaning we have 2 million hectares more than Zambia. And what you're going to lease is 50,000. Surely Galana Kulalu is 1.75 million hectares. You've not even gone to Bura. All these actually lying bare. If you talk of Galana Kulalu, this is a project that was initiated in 2014. It's 1.75 million, but initially was intended for 1 million being put under irrigation and maize for a large percentage of it. We came in, we brought the Israelis, the Green Avant, and we gave them a contract to start to do for us a demo farm of 10,000 acres. After we sank in about 7.2 billion, I think almost 8 billion. Part of it from the Israeli government, part of it from National Irrigation Board. The project failed. But at the point of failure, a lot of it was said that there are cartels who used to import the maize and all that. And there's a reason that it failed. But we were able to produce about 32 bags per acre at that point. They were targeting 40 bags, 35 to 40 bags per acre. It means that it's actually viable.
The project is viable.
The project is viable. It's the implementation that was wrong. This year in January, the president went to Galana Kulalu. I went with these guys, with a contractor. I also went with the Twiga Foods. And it was agreed that immediately that there are two things that are required. One is to do up a very big dam for about 30 or 40 billion, which was to be done on PPP. And then the contractor was to release, to get about 5 or 10,000 acres ready immediately. So that is what I will see as a long-term plan. So that's why when we saw that the minister, on a statement saying that for the short-term plan, we are importing. But for the long-term, we have agreed with Zambia that we will be growing maize there. You see, hata nafikiria, when I go to church and praying for bounty in this country, and I will be saying, God, help the rains in Kenya and Zambia. Please allow us to just pray for one country. We can't be praying for two countries.
But let me just ask this question. Whenever we are told about the failure of the Galana Kulalu project, a lot of things are said about it. That's not my interest. This project was nestled in the Tana Delta, is it not?
Yes.
What do you need the dam for? What do you need the irrigation for? Just explain to me, because the thing that place doesn't lack is water.
Yes.
So when you say you want to build a dam, when you say you want to have irrigation, what are you saying? We want to use the water that exists there to do all these things?
Yes.
And in the absence of what we are suggesting, this thing cannot work. Is that what we're saying?
No, you see, the irrigation essentially is to create a dam to trap the water, and then that water can now be reticulated across the vast lands. You see,
it can be harnessed and then controlled.
Then reticulated. You see, right now it's just a river, so it's just flowing. So you need to be able to now contain it in large amounts, because it just crosses to the Indian Ocean, and then now so that the entire 1 million acres that has initially been demarcated now people downstream and across can be able to access that water, and that can actually be done even by PPP.
All right, now.
Because the farmers, whoever, if like the initial Galana Kulalu, they trained 250 farmers in Israel, who are supposed to come in and through that acquired skill to come in to be allocated the land to be able to farm. So if we say like this many youth that can be given 5 acres or 10 acres or 50 acres, yeah, and they are trained. They are the ones who will be paying for that water. So as part of their costs, they will know the water that I'm getting from the dam, I'll be paying so much for per cubic meter, but then the water will be available.
Is this the same region where some Middle Eastern country at some point had wanted to lease land?
Yes. Actually, it was Qatar, and I think also was it Kuwait that they had wanted to actually lease that whole piece to grow food for themselves. Yeah, this whole agenda, I think that's where it came from. but we have seen the countries like Saudi Arabia are now growing wheat in the deserts.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, through desalination of ocean water.
Yes.
Yeah, you can imagine how expensive that is. We've seen Egypt building a 35 kilometers river. Yeah, costing $58 billion.
Exactly 174.
Yeah, 174 in total.
Yes.
Yeah, so costing $58 billion. Yeah, to be able to increase the land under cultivation. Those are the long term. That's what long term means. Of course, Egypt has a capacity of going to South Sudan, the source of the Nile, and telling them you're not using your land. We want 1 million acres. Yeah, and they'll get it because South Sudan is not using it. But they don't, because a country that cannot feed itself is not free. Yeah, if you're growing food in Zambia, and Zambia has a shortage, they will tell you, unfortunately, your maize cannot leave Zambia. Yeah, because even our people are hungry. Yeah, so leave it here. We'll compensate you another year. Yes, ama tugawane, or we increase the taxes on it so that you cannot not move it. So that capacity has to be built in Kenya, and we have enough land for that. Yeah, Zambia is a landlocked country. You can imagine how will we get fertilizer to Zambia if we can't get it to Kenya? Yeah, on Tazara. Yeah. If we believe that Zambia has such good policies that can get us more maize per acre,
and at a lower cost.
The CS is government. Bring those policies here, localize them.
But you know the discussion is actually incomplete in my mind. You know why? If you're saying they have 3 harvests in a year, does it then not speak of the type of grain that you use? Yes, it may be the place that you plant, because I know, for instance, in the Wasingishu area, they harvest probably once a year. Okay. Now, where I come from, a place called Muhoroni, we harvest maize twice a year. Okay. So, are we saying that there are no parts of this country where you can plant a certain variety of maize seed and get 3 harvests a year, if it is possible? I mean, we have Calro that does these things. My personal belief is that there exists not only the technology but the knowledge to do exactly what we're saying they want to do in Zambia.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you see, the reason why we have 1 or 2 seasons is because it goes with the rain patterns.
Yes.
But if you irrigate it, yeah, then you can have maize whenever you want. Yeah, and that's the purpose of the Galana Kulalu. Yeah, because you can shorten the period with the Calro and all this to 3 months. Yeah, and also the fact that the water is available full time, then you can be able to do it for even 4 times a year. This one you get it out, put the next one. Yeah, so the capacity is there. It's the will. Yeah, because if we are willing to go spend money in Zambia, then we should be willing to spend that money here in Kenya.
I want to ask a question that relates to your immediate previous former position as planning. Planning is I'm told as a layman that people plan in various stages: as immediate, medium term, long term. Now, would you say that in the time when you were PS in that particular ministry, that we had mapped out the plans we have for this country, for the next 10, 20, 30 years? What had we done?
Yes, we operate under the Vision 2030 blueprint. So we are almost there. We are 7 years to go. This is the final.
So everything which relates to this country, whether it's agriculture, whether it's industry, whether it's education, all those things have been planned for up until that particular point.
Until 2030, yes. Beyond that, we have not planned.
All right.
Yeah.
Now,
So,
if we go into the details of our planning, it also means, therefore, that we plan for the eventuality that, or the possibility that there might be a drought. We plan for the possibility that we may have more rain than we know what to do with.
yes.
Simply because we are often told by the experts that expect this. And these days, the science of predicting weather and what have you is fairly accurate.
Yes.
If you're told it will happen, it will happen. Okay? Now, if we have all those plans in place, then you say it's the will. But beyond the will, do these plans need an optimum, or do they need a perfect condition for them to be implemented, or do they also take care of certain vagaries that may not have been foreseen? For instance, we didn't foresee COVID. This very long drought, maybe we did not foresee. How do you ensure that the plans, if implemented, work? That's really what I'm asking.
You see, the issue, as you said, is not in the planning. The plans are there. Actually, we have beautiful plans. I don't think there is anyone who has better plans than us. The failure is in the implementation. When you're talking about cereal, we have the NCPB, National Cereal and Produce Board. It's supposed to be exactly what you had said about what China does. It's for them to buy, to keep stock, and to ensure that they plan on stocking it for us. But a lot of issues come that the whole issue of cartels. Yeah, there are people who do not want there to be stocks. Yeah, so that to allow them to keep. They're in the business of importing. They're waiting. They want the cereal board to be saying, we have cereal for another 1 month. Yeah. And after that, Kenyans, you can go starve or eat yams. Yeah. So the government comes in and says, Kenyans can't eat yams. So you guys go ahead.
Import.
bring the maize. Yeah. So there has to be the implementation is really where this thing is hurting. Yeah. And those organizations have to be put to task. Yeah, they have to be put into serious task, because serious board can be surely how they were refusing to buy maize from farmers at 3,000 shillings last year. Right now it's 5,000 shillings. Yeah.
And they bought maize at 5,000.
They've bought maize at 5,000, even more. When you add duty, it's coming to about 6,000. Yeah. So, and at this point, they will still say that they don't have money for that. So I think the cartelization of that whole sector is what needs to be looked into.
You know, I'm looking at our food production and food security, and I'm looking at the county governments. Now, when we plan, now that we do have county governments, how exactly does the national government ensure that the planning cascades into the counties and that they're implemented? Because government is in charge of policy, even if a ministry is devolved into the county system, but still the government is in charge of policy. I'm saying this because even when we talk of farming and outputs, it's within counties.
Yeah.
And so the counties ought to have a say.
Yes, counties have the CIDPs, the County Integrated Development Plans,
yes.
Yeah, which then is the cascading of the national plans into the counties. The unfortunate thing then comes in is which areas are devolved. Agriculture is devolved, but the food security is not. Food security still sits under the national government. Yeah. And the issues of agriculture that are devolved is everything other than policy. So policy still sits with the national government. Counties can't really do much. I've seen that they are not even able to pay salaries. Yeah. So
there's that detail, isn't it? Eric, they haven't paid, isn't it?
Yeah.
They haven't received a shilling from
from December.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the story of own source revenue at best is usually vague. Yes.
It's not vague, it's because they keep it vague, because they steal it. Yeah. They steal it as source at the markets. Yeah. So there's really, they budget for it, but they collect it and bank it themselves. They eat it. Yeah. Yeah. And that happens when you're not getting money from the national government to steal. So you steal what's available. Yeah. Yeah. So then you find that the issue then at county, even operational, they can't operate.
But then, if we look at now, let's just look at it from this angle. Devolution, no, agriculture is devolved.
Yes.
Policy is still national. And it makes sense for policy to be national because you're looking countrywide, you're looking food security, national, fine. At the county level, with all these devolved functions, shouldn't it be that now counties are talking about how they can support farmers so that then farmers can produce, how they can support farmers to produce food cheaply or more affordably, so that food is available in the market. Why is the failure when we get to a point where we actually don't even have... We are importing grain, we are importing maize, we are looking to import beans, we are importing rice, we're buying rice from the farmers here, but we are still importing more. What's
You see,
the weak link?
The failure in our agriculture could partly be on the devolution itself. Before devolution, we had extension services and extension service workers.
Before devolution?
Before devolution.
That was before the new century.
That one was immediately after independence, and then
yes,
it disappeared.
It's been there for a very long time.
On paper.
Actually, I remember myself, even this, the veterinary, not veterinary, we used to have these agriculture extension officers.
It used to be called Girigasha.
Girigasha.
Yes.
They were coming at home, even as late as by the time I was leaving the country in 2000. They were there. They were coming for the tea factory, for our maize, for the animals, the cows. They're the ones who even helped to move us from the ngombes with the humps. I think there was a sahiwals to the Frisians. Yeah. So it was there and it was working. Yeah. They're the ones who are helping us on enhance our yields, know the kind of the grain to plant, the harvest, the seeds, the practices, the farming practices. And so when agriculture was devolved, it was extension services was actually one of the key things. Yeah, because then the counties are able to appreciate and understand exactly what can be grown there. Yeah. And have those extension workers guide the farmers on the same. But that's one thing that has never picked up.
But then, and this is where the argument is, that actually these extension services had collapsed even before devolution came in.
So
otherwise, counties would have just inherited the extension workers into the county system. There was nobody to inherit.
But they inherited the function. They inherited the function.
But not the officers.
They did.
Yeah. So if you inherit the function and you genuinely want to get it to work, you will put it to work before you look for other things to do. Yeah. So, and if agriculture, for some of these counties, the mainstay is agriculture. I'm saying that coming from Muranga. Yeah. Across, you're talking Trans Nzoia, you're talking all these other counties that actually are producing the food for our country, and they're the majority of them. Yeah, for that covers that 10.2% of our arable land. Yeah, then if we now got the extension services to work, then we'd be seeing the yields going up. We'll see the kind of produce that is put by the farmers to ensure that we not just on subsistence. The farmers, whatever they are putting up, is something that gives them money. Yeah, and delivers good yields, and also for our country helps us becoming food sufficient. So I think that was the ranking last year that we were the 129th hungriest country because we cannot feed ourselves. Yeah, so when we see such headlines, what does it speak to us? Yeah, does it tell us change the way you're doing things, or does it tell us go to Zambia?
Maybe that's part of the change.
Because soon it will say, for Pakistan, we'll lease land to grow our rice. Or to Amoya, relax. We no longer need your rice.
Tutajenga manyumba. It's 26 minutes to 8. Let's take a break. Irungu Nyakera is the party leader of Farmers Party. He was a candidate in the gubernatorial election for Muranga County. What number were you?
I can't remember. Okay. That's not one.
Okay. And previously, Irungu served as a PS in the Ruto administration, serving as PS for planning and before that, PS for transport.
Correct.
Kenya's biggest conversation continues shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Conversation continues with the Farmers Party leader, Irungu Nyakera, who's here to talk about our food security in the country and what it is that farmers ought to be getting in terms of support so they can do this. One of the things that the CS for Agriculture said is the cost of production in Zambia is ridiculously low. He was talking about something like, is it $30 per ton or $300 per ton, something that is just amazing. How would they get to such low production prices? Is it because their land is arable and still virgin, hasn't been spoiled, or what else?
Or is it that they are very heavily subsidized?
Could be both. Could be both, actually. And also, you see, there's that, the cost of production, but then you also need to be told the costs to get it to Kenya. Because you remember, Zambia is a landlocked country.
Yeah.
So getting it again on the rail from Tazara to Beira or to Tanzania, then on the ships or the trucks to Mombasa, you might find that it increases the cost. But the one is, it depends on the bags per acre. Yeah, because the more bags per acre you get, the cheaper it becomes. Yeah. So for us, I know, like back in Moranga, we usually do, when you're doing very well, you're doing like 3 bags
An acre.
an acre. Yeah. Because of the poor
What
farming
did you do to your
practices.
soils?
Yeah, poor farming practices. Then, of course, the issue of fertilizer. Fertilizer is too expensive right now.
Yeah.
It's going for almost 7,000 shillings. So you'll find that most farmers are not using it. The issues of if you decide to use manure, probably not doing it as much, because also it's quite expensive. So you find that then the yields come down. So what we need to do is get the right grains, and using Calro and the others to give us for the different climates, like the way we used to have Katumani for the dry areas. With that, then it will increase our yields. 2, the issues of the inputs, bringing down the cost of inputs. Because you see, when we import, there are things that we do even import the inflation. It's what's bringing up the pressure on our dollar. So that loss that we would have made by the dollar weakening, we can actually put that money into subsidies, for inputs. We've moved from 10%, importing 10% of our food to about 17% currently in less than a decade. It means that is more pressure. So import, we need to give subsidies on fertilizer. We need to give subsidies on all the other inputs that we have. Then we need to bring back the extension services. So that those extension service workers can be able to help our farmers improve on the yield. Then finally, and for farmers, what's most important is markets. The same way we are saying that we will guarantee the farmers in Zambia purchase of their crops. Let's guarantee our farmers that you finish farming, there's a market. Because what happens is, you're told to grow maize, you grow maize, and then you had been told it will be bought at 3,000 shillings, and then the NCPB comes and says, there's too much maize, we'll buy it at 1,000 shillings. You see, you kill the spirit of these farmers. So the same way you treat those other farmers, let's treat our farmers the same. Let's create the capacity for actually having food reserves, so that, as we said, if there is too much maize this year, let's have stores that we can stock this maize for the next 2-3 years, so that by that time we are not struggling again to bring in imports. Then the cartelization of that sector and that line, there are too many cartels that are operating there. Those cartels will never want us to be food sufficient. They will always want to have those quotas to import their maize and their mealies and everything else at that time. If you ask yourself, like we're giving an example of edible oils. Last year alone, we imported 90 billion shillings worth of edible oils, and we'll do the same this year. Last year alone, we imported 25 billion worth of rice. We'll do the same this year. The amount of money we made exporting coffee, all of it went back to importing rice. So we have to have a real conversation on food sufficiency, and we have to remove those middlemen and the cartels from the equation. Let them do something else. But on issues that are so pertinent and critical, like food security, I think the government should act very firmly.
How do
to
you get
safeguard
rid of
the
those
Kenyans.
cartels? When you say, okay, so let's remove the cartels, what ought to happen?
They do not have to be part of policy. You see, if we come up with like the Galana Kulalu, as we had said, is a project that would work. I believe that it actually can work. I was speaking to the chairman of NIB, National Irrigation Board, last week, and we were speaking about this Galana Kulalu, and himself, he tells me this thing can work. Yeah, it just needs the government to put the right policies towards its execution, to put money behind it, and not to listen to anybody who's trying to drive it the wrong direction. We have a lot of people who will be willing to go there and farm. Yeah, the government just needs to ensure that we have enough water, and then the people who are there, they are rightly trained, and then there's a market for their produce. Yeah.
The fight against this, though, will come into you're fighting the private sector and free business. Because when you talk about cartel, it's not government. This is the private sector that comes in. How do you separate that fight against cartel as you still say that, the way to advance our sector is to go more into PPPs, working with the private sector to improve our food production?
But it's government giving this private sector guys contracts to import. Yeah, so it's government. So the corruption starts with government. Yeah. So if they can say we need to reduce this import and give themselves targets, and the president says you have targets, we import more next year than we imported this year, we fire you. Yeah, and you sign there. Next year you see that you've imported more, you just tender your resignation and you're out. We need someone who's firm. The president has to be firm on it, because we cannot be talking about food sufficiency year in, year out. We cannot be talking about the weakening of the shilling year in, year out. And we are seeing that we are importing nonsense that can actually be grown locally.
Can also be just... Okay. The issue of market, you talked about making... It's sort of like guaranteeing our farmers that there'll be a market.
Yes.
For off-taking.
Yes.
Is it also guaranteeing their income? Is this where the issue of guaranteed minimum income comes in?
Yes, it does.
Explain that concept.
And it's not just in Kenya. If you look at the US, yeah, the corn farmers have the guaranteed uptake from government, and the guarantee will be even from the National Cereal and Produce Board. Yeah, I was talking to these marketers. We have about 52 markets in Nairobi, and they were telling me the biggest challenge is that when they are selling things like the tomatoes and fruits in a few days, then they are spoiled. Yeah, and they don't have an offtake for them. Yeah, which means that if these markets places could even have chillers. Yeah, because the tomatoes when they ripen, they can also be an offtake, because they can make potato these ketchups and all this. Yeah, so we have to think of for us to guarantee. That's where the private sector comes in. It's about value addition. Actually, value addition adds 5 times the value of the produce. Yeah, if you do the value addition. So yes, there is a way to guarantee. Yeah, we can guarantee directly as government for minimum guarantee on key crops, like what you're saying on cereals, because they go into the national reserves. Yeah, and then on these others, you can come up with the value addition. When I was a PS under planning, with what we had proposed was actually, and we had worked it out with Kari and Calro, was actually putting up these chillers, and across we had identified about 9 locations nationally, where you would have people will know that once I harvest my tomatoes, there's a place that I can take them, to be there even as I look for the market, my fruits, my sukuma wiki, and those things can actually be chilled for a period of even up to 2 weeks.
Why doesn't it work? I mean, I'm just looking back at, if you look at the cooperatives, the farmer cooperatives that come up, farmer cooperatives were doing all that, aggregating, and when you aggregate, then you're able to, first of all, store. Then if the storage requires some sort of cold chain, then the cooperative can put up a cold chain. Why did these things collapse? Because we had cooperatives that had started doing this. We had cooperatives in milk that were doing that, putting
But
chillers.
everything you're saying
We had cooperatives for potatoes that were starting to do cold
being
chain.
done.
Yeah.
And they were slowly moving to the next level that we're speaking of. And then suddenly we were back to the dark ages.
Yes. Because, the cooperative is the best in terms of aggregation. Yeah. But also for the cooperative to be able to aggregate, then they need to also have enough volumes. Yeah. So sometimes the issue came up because of wrangles, leadership wrangles. You found another cooperative has opened.
So people open
They
cooperatives
split.
like churches.
Yes. They split. They say we have another branch. Yeah. So it gets to a point where it's no longer making sense,
Viable.
no longer viable. But I think in terms of the cooperative movement, that's actually an area that we need to look at, and for purposes of aggregation, market, and also value addition.
There's a concept that is often used by government. It's called protectionism. We had the CEO of Bidco Oil sitting exactly where you're sitting, and he told us something interesting. He said that those who are in that business of manufacturing edible oils only use up to 65% of their capacity. The CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers told us something similar. Okay? Now that 65% of their capacity meets the needs that we have. So when we say we are importing, are we importing the base, what you need to manufacture the edible oils, or are we importing the finished product? And if we are, where does the government's role in ensuring that it protects its industries, it protects its farmers come in? Because, again, with farmers, countries are known to even pay farmers not to produce for fear of a glut. In some cases, when they're protecting, they make sure that a similar product being imported is so expensive that you'd rather buy the local one. Meaning, local industry, local capacity is enhanced. Now, in our planning, I'm asking two questions. One, do we include such thoughts, such aspirations? And if we do, why is it that we know them in theory, but we never see them in practice?
One, I think of the 90 billion that's of edible oils, I'd say more than 60% will be finished. 60-70% will be finished. Edible oils, and actually that then brings the thoughts on issues of even that protectionism, because it's important for the economy. Because you cannot be going to build another person's economy when you're killing yours. If the Bidco and the others are at 65%, if they were at 100, they'd use more fuel. They'd use more labor.
They'd pay the government more
taxes.
Yes.
Things that we do not get from those other places. Less of our youth will be jobless. So there is a lot that comes with actually localizing our industries and our production. So even the other day when we were speaking about the issues of the dollar, we were talking of we need to actually restrict importation on some things that are necessary and that can be produced locally. And that way we help uplift our shilling. So from a planning point, all those things are actually done. All those things are looked at. That's why I was saying our biggest issue is not the planning, it's the implementation at the port of Mombasa when those things come in. Who's looking at them?
This implementation story, though, because we hear it a lot.
A great deal.
The government plans and the government should implement. So you're saying that the government plans, but the government does not have the capacity or the willingness to implement.
Yes, you see, planning. The reason why planning is not very difficult is it brings together, and everybody with all these great ideas gets to put them in, and they are put in a very beautiful book. That's usually put in a shelf and gathers dust. The implementation, is what they say, ground. Now this is the ground.
And where is the disconnect?
The disconnect is now at the ground. Everybody is trying to make a coin. So that's where you find I will allow you to bring in an extra container without even registering it there. I will allow you to bring in something above a quota. I will allow you to import duty free, because by the time you import something for 100 million shillings, there's 10 million for me. So the implementation is not just for the books. It's actually there's real financial significance for some people, and that's where the issues of corruption come in.
So that's where corruption now.
Yes.
Corruption runs our implementation.
Yes.
You know, the story of edible oils is a sad one. It's sad because as far back as 1974, we had a blueprint of what to do. Why? We had looked at India. India had moved from being an importer to meeting their domestic consumption, even exporting, in a period of 3 years. Why? They looked at the fundamentals of producing this edible oil. What seeds do you need? What cereals do you need? All that. And they had a plan for growing it. We had something similar. We had cashew nuts at the coast. We talked about. There was even a movement and even a unit, an agency formed by government to ensure that this thing was done. But it died, of course. Now, right now, we hear talks of we want to go and grow palm oil, palm trees, palm whatever it is in Uganda. And I'm thinking, for heaven's sake. Why is it that our story is always something we're going to do in the future? And yet the reality is this very thing we're talking about doing in the future, we had already done, we had a blueprint for it, and we killed it. Now, you're talking about cartels. These cartels are people who live in this country and individuals who must have influence, because it is not possible for you to circumvent a government policy if you don't have power.
Yeah.
So it means that the very people who tell us they want to implement the policies in government, they're the very, very people who are the cartels. That's the only thing that we're being told. Because I'm listening, I'm looking, I'm saying, who has the power to say one thing and do the complete opposite and nothing happens to them? Somebody in authority.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So
As we conclude, let's conclude the conversation. And Irungu, I've got to ask you this political question. So, Farmers Party, Cleopa Malala is appointed UDA Secretary General. He immediately embarks on a conversation of let's build a giant party. And he says, let's see how we can consolidate all the affiliate parties of Azimio. And then there's all hue and cry. Musalia Mudavadi of ANC says, or whatever, Ford Kenya says, this and the other. One day, Cleopa Malala says, actually, there are parties that are already having conversations with UDA. They are folding up so that they can now join UDA. One party was Farmers Party. So is Farmers Party still in existence, or has Farmers Party folded to join UDA?
You know, when we were told about the politics of is it chicanery and all this crookedness and crookedry that it has ended, we thought that it had. You see, we were called for a meeting just to discuss the issues of Kenya Kwanza, and how as Kenya Kwanza we can have more activities, how we can come together, we can form a secretariat, for how we operationalize our activities and really building to the future. And we had a beautiful meeting, a closed door meeting. Then when the meeting ended, we were told, by the way, the media is here. Let's just go address the media. So when we're addressing the media, the statement is there, has been written, is being read, is saying that these 6 parties have agreed to fold, they'll start dissolving. Next week they'll see the registrar and they will no longer be there.
And you are seated.
You're seated there, and then now after the statement, you're told, okay, you speak. So for me, I said we are happy to be in a partnership, but I didn't say anything about that we have dissolved. And later on, we issued a statement as Farmers Party and said we are not merging, we have not merged, we are not part of UDA, we are not dissolving, and we remain a party to represent farmers and Kenyans. So
that had not even been an agenda for that meeting?
No, it was not an agenda. So we didn't even know where it came from. But again, you cannot disrespect the president's party. So you just have to keep quiet until the end of it. And then from there, now you come and have to answer to Kenyans and to my members. My members were livid. asking me, why have you dissolved our party?
Without asking us first.
Without asking us. With the same thing we are saying, public participation. We have to ensure that, and the minister has to ensure public participation before taking us to Zambia.
Irungu, thank you very much for joining us. Irungu Nyakera is the party leader of Farmers Party, which is not dissolving, like he says, which is not folding, which has not gone to the register of political parties or anything. We've been talking about food security in this country.